Breaking news. Just minutes ago, investigators stepped forward with evidence that will change the way this case is remembered forever. Evidence in the disappearance of 7-month-old Emmanuel Haro, a child who could not speak for himself, could not run, could not fight back. When the story first broke, it spread like wildfire. A mother in tears, a father demanding answers, a family claiming a stranger had snatched their baby from a parking lot in broad daylight. The headlines painted a picture of desperation. Police scouring parking lots, neighbors combing through brush and ravines, volunteers holding candles late into the night, begging for Emmanuel's safe return. But as the days dragged on, the cracks began to widen. The stranger no one saw, the attack no camera recorded, the injuries that didn't match the story. And now this press release confirms what so many had begun to fear. There was never a kidnapper. There was never a mysterious man. Instead, the evidence circles back to the very people Emmanuel trusted most. His mother, Rebecca. His father, Jake. The ones who should have been his shield became his greatest threat. The hands that should have rocked him to sleep are now the hands accused of ending his short life. This is not just a crime, it is a betrayal of the most sacred bond we know, that between a parent and a child. And as investigators lay out their findings, the question echoes louder than ever. How could the people who brought Emmanuel into this world also be the ones to take him out of it? On the afternoon of August 14th, Rebecca Hart told authorities she had taken her infant son, Emmanuel, to a sporting goods store in Yucaipa, California. She said she parked the car, stepped into the hot August air, and laid him across the back seat to change his diaper. The asphalt shimmered in the heat. Cars rolled in and out of the lot. Ordinary moments of a parent's routine until, as she later claimed, everything changed in an instant. According to Rebecca, a man approached her. He greeted her with the single word, "Hola." She said she barely had time to react before he struck her. She described the sudden rush of pain, the world spinning, and then blackness. When she regained consciousness, her baby boy was gone. Emmanuel's car seat sat empty, his blanket left crumpled on the floor, and the air that once carried the soft cries of a child now carried only her screams. Her call to police was frantic. Her voice broke as she told them her baby had been taken. Officers rushed to the scene. Sirens echoed through the streets. In those first moments, everything felt urgent, raw, real. The image of a young mother attacked in broad daylight was enough to mobilize an entire community. Volunteers lined up to search. Flyers with Emmanuel's face spread across neighborhoods. The nation's eyes turned toward Yucaipa. But even then, something was off. Witnesses who had been in the parking lot reported they hadn't seen a struggle. They hadn't heard a cry, a scuffle, or a fall. Surveillance cameras caught vehicles pulling in and out of the lot, families going about their errands, but the mysterious man Rebecca described was nowhere to be found. And when investigators looked closer, her story, meant to explain the disappearance, began to fracture under its own weight. The heat of the asphalt, the cries of a mother, the empty seat of a baby who could not defend himself, these details painted a haunting picture. But behind them, investigators began to sense the outline of something else, a story that didn't match the evidence, a truth that was waiting to be uncovered. As detectives began piecing together the timeline of that day, they noticed something troubling. Rebecca's description of being struck unconscious didn't align with the evidence. The bruises she pointed to were faint, inconsistent, and did not reflect the violent attack she described. Medical staff quietly noted that the injuries seemed more self-inflicted than caused by an assailant. Surveillance footage, reviewed frame by frame, told a different story than Rebecca's words. The cameras showed cars, families, ordinary shoppers entering and leaving the lot, but not a single glimpse of the stranger she described. No man hovering nearby, no sudden approach, no figure slipping away with a child in his arms. In the places where Rebecca's account insisted there should be evidence, there was only silence. And then came the interviews. Under questioning, both Rebecca and Jake shifted uneasily in their chairs. Their words stumbled, their tones faltered. Investigators reported nervous laughter at the wrong moments, vague recollections where detail should have been sharp, and eventually, refusal. Rebecca, who had once begged for help, stopped cooperating altogether. The desperation of grieving parents was absent. In its place, detectives saw only guarded faces and changing stories. The deeper they searched, the darker it grew. Jake's vehicle was seized. Inside, investigators hoped to uncover clues that might explain what had happened to baby Emmanuel. Cadaver dogs were brought to the family's home, their sharp senses trained to detect what human eyes cannot. Every step of the search carried a chilling undertone because detectives were beginning to ask a question the public wasn't ready to hear. Was Emmanuel ever kidnapped at all? Instead of fighting to bring their son home, it seemed his parents were fighting to hold up a collapsing lie. The hours spent searching fields, the prayers whispered into the night, the neighbors who left food and water for exhausted volunteers were all based on a story investigators were now dismantling piece by piece. And a suspicion grew, one thought refused to let go. Did Emmanuel's short life end before the search ever began? Was the nation crying out for a child who, in truth, had never stood a chance to be found alive? Today, the investigation reached its most devastating turning point. In a press release issued just moments ago, law enforcement confirmed what many feared but hoped would never be true. Emmanuel Haro was not kidnapped. His parents, Rebecca and Jake, have been arrested and officially charged with murder. For weeks, the story of a stranger in a parking lot had gripped the nation, but investigators now say that story was nothing more than a carefully constructed illusion designed to mislead and to distract. Behind the curtain of tears and public appeals for help, detectives uncovered evidence that strips away the disguise. Forensic teams reported traces of human decomposition inside areas connected to the Haro family. Conflicting phone records placed Rebecca and Jake in locations that did not match their sworn statements. Search warrants suggest that items possibly connected to Emmanuel's final moments may have been deliberately concealed. Each discovery pushed the investigation farther from the narrative of an unknown kidnapper and closer to a chilling truth. Cold facts, hard evidence. No mysterious figure to chase, no unfamiliar face to fear. Only a circle tightening around the two people who should have been Emmanuel's first line of protection. The parents who claim to be victims are now accused of being perpetrators. And in the wake of this revelation, one sentence from the sheriff's office carries unbearable weight. The search was never for a missing child, it was for the truth buried beneath his parents' lies. The announcement sent a shockwave through the community. For days, volunteers had combed through ravines, searched abandoned lots, and walked shoulder to shoulder in the blistering sun. They carried water bottles, flashlights, and hope. Some skipped work. Others left their children at home believing they were helping to bring another child back. And now they are told that all of it, all of the sweat, the prayers, the sleepless nights, was built on a lie, manipulated by the very people who cried out for their help. The grief of Emmanuel's neighbors is matched only by their anger. Just a week ago, candles were lit on sidewalks, small flames flickering against the night sky, each one meant to guide a missing baby home. But now those same candles stand as reminders of something far more devastating, that Emmanuel may never return at all. For investigators, the betrayal cuts deep. Hours of manpower, thousands of dollars in resources, helicopters overhead, cadaver dogs deployed, all for a story that was collapsing even as it was being told. Detectives describe a mixture of frustration and grief, because while they signed up to chase criminals, they did not expect to be deceived by parents whose child's life hung in the balance. And then came another revelation: Jake Haro's criminal history, an earlier conviction for child cruelty, a history that now rises to the surface with haunting relevance. How many warning signs were overlooked? How many opportunities were missed to intervene before Emmanuel was placed in the care of someone with such a past? Questions that leave the public shaken and officials searching for answers. Parents are supposed to be guardians, protectors, the safe harbor against the dangers of the world. But in this case, the danger did not come from outside. It came from within the very walls of the home. Emmanuel's greatest threat was not a stranger in the shadows. It was the two people who should have fought hardest to keep him safe. This case was never about a stranger in the night. It was never about a mysterious figure slipping past cameras or a predator hiding in a parking lot. It was about betrayal from within. It was about the collapse of the bond that should be unbreakable. It was about the hands that were meant to cradle a child, instead becoming the ones accused of ending his life. The world rushed to believe the Haros, because who would question a mother sobbing for her baby? Who would doubt a father demanding answers? We wanted to trust them. We wanted to believe their story because the alternative was too horrifying to face. But now, with each piece of evidence, the mask falls further away. And what we are left with is not the image of parents desperate for their child, but parents desperate to shield themselves from accountability. The community grieves for Emmanuel, but there is something deeper than grief lingering here. A quiet recognition that danger does not always come from the places we fear. Sometimes it comes from where we feel safest. Sometimes the threat is not a stranger at all, but the very people entrusted with love and protection. If trust itself can be weaponized, if the arms that should comfort can instead destroy, then how do we ever protect the most innocent among us? How do we guard children when their greatest risk is not out in the world, but within their own home? These are the questions Emmanuel's case forces us to confront. Questions with no easy answers, but with consequences we cannot ignore. And so, Emmanuel's story cannot end here. His short life deserves more than to be forgotten, folded into another headline. His memory must remain a warning, a call to vigilance, and a reminder that truth can hide behind the faces we least expect. We will continue to follow every development, every courtroom update, every piece of evidence that comes to light. Because Emmanuel's story matters, because his truth deserves to be told, and his name deserves to be remembered. So if you want to stay with us as this case unfolds, subscribe and turn on notifications. Not for numbers, not for clicks, but because every child deserves a voice, and Emmanuel Haro no longer has one. We owe it to him to keep listening. We owe it to him to keep telling the truth so that it will never, ever be buried again.